Conservatives, are you being scammed? I want to approach this conversation from a different angle. Rather than me focusing on challenging specific details where, you might have one opinion, I have a different opinion. We're just going to speak about the fundamentals, just fundamental concepts in terms of how politics works. So let's just start off, hopefully in a point of agreement. I think we can both agree that the Democrats and the Republicans as a party are not for you, right? These parties consist of elites that are focused on themselves. They're focused on money and power, right? They're not focused on serving the American people. I think we can agree on that, right? So that being said, one of the issues is that these corrupt politicians, regardless of party, being that they are not focused on the American people and serving us, the voters, they're focused on themselves, they need some kind of cover, right? They can't stay in power and continue to win elections if we all realize that they're just completely betraying us, right? So they need to distract us, right? I'm sure many conservatives would agree on that point. The tactic of distraction, right? And the distraction would be to shift your focus away from things that matter, right? So the Democrats, the Republicans are aware of the things that you need, right? They're aware of issues that need to be addressed, right? But the focus is not on addressing those issues. The focus is not on you. So they need to focus your attention on something else, right? They're not going to want to focus on issues that matter. So if that is the case, that would mean that whatever the GOP is focused on would not be things that matter, right? Why would if either the GOP doesn't care about you guys, then they care about themselves, and if that's the case, they're not going to want to talk about things that matter, right? So that would necessarily mean that whatever the GOP is focused on would be things that don't matter, right? Because if the things they're talking about does matter, that's bad for them, because if they keep bringing attention to it, it's going to put them in a corner to where, when they get elected, the people are going to be expecting them to deliver the goods on these things, right? They don't want your attention on what's important, so they won't be talking to you about what's important. They'll talk to you about other things to distract you. So what is the GOP talking about? Again, we're not going to get into the specifics, right? You answer that question. What do you see a lot of the GOP politicians talking about? Is it not interesting that what the GOP politicians are talking about are what the online parasites in media, whether it's mainstream or independent, are talking about as well? The topics that these politicians keep talking about and keep trying to focus your attention on, it's the same thing we see from the parasites in media who serve as their mouthpieces, right? The propagandists, right? Now, I want you to also observe something else in contrast. We don't see the same pattern on the left. And I want you to ask yourself why that is, right? Remember, the Democrats and Republicans are not going to want to focus your attention on things that matter. Now, that's not an absolute statement. That's not to say that everything they say is things that don't matter, but they're going to focus most of their attention on things that do not matter, generally speaking, right? So what do we see on the left? The left is focused on things like having a ceasefire in Gaza. That's what the left is focused on, right? Not the liberals, not the centrists, the left, right? Socialists, social democrats, the communists, right? The progressives. They're focused on ceasefire. What is their media focused on? Ceasefire, right? Left-wing media, right? Not centrist liberal media, CNN, MSNBC. Left-wing media is focused on ceasefire in Gaza. Left-wingers are focused on ceasefire in Gaza. What is the Democratic Party focused on? Israel has a right to defend itself. So, in the GOP, the things they're focused on matches what the media is talking about, and it matches what the conservatives are talking about, right? So you have the elites who are not focused on serving the people, focused on the same things that the voters are focused on the same things the media is focused on. There's a problem there, right? Again, we already established they're not going to want you to focus on things that matter. So how is it that you have these three elements so aligned? But in the left, you don't have that effect, right? The left is focused on healthcare, right? The left is focused on increasing wages. The left is focused on ceasefire in Gaza. These are things that, generally speaking, the Democrats are all opposed to. right? The Democrats ran on wages, right? Increasing wages. And then as soon as they got in the office, we don't really hear them talking about it anymore, right? They'll talk about any positives in terms of where wages goes, right? If wages increase for whatever reason, they'll definitely talk about that. But in terms of them pushing, like, we got to do stuff to increase wages, I don't see that being a focus. It was a focus when they were running, right? I don't see much of a gap between conservatives, the propaganda media on their side, and the elites in the GOP, which seems to suggest to me that conservatives are being scammed because their thoughts are aligned with where the elites in the GOP want them to be. Think about this for a second. The right-wing media, right-wing independent media, the message and the focus is the same as right-wing establishment media, Fox News, right? So Fox News, you have these multi-millionaire elites, right, who are so distant from regular Americans. They don't know what it's like. They don't understand your issues. They're so disconnected from you. Now, in independent right-wing media, there isn't much of a gap between what we see in the establishment media, because you look at people like Ben Shapiro, multi-millionaire. Steven Crowder, multi-millionaire, right? But regardless, independent media, same message. The mainstream media, elites, same message. GOP, millionaire elites, same message. Why? Elites in the GOP that you agree with me don't care about you. They want you to focus on the very things you're focused on, right? The Democrats don't want their base thinking about ceasefire. They don't want their base thinking too much about healthcare, right? I mean, they'll do a little pandering here and there. Well, Joe Biden did something about negotiating drug prices and did some things that affect a very, very small amount of drugs. But, they did just a little something, and then that's it. And then it's not really a lot of focus on it, right? We don't see the Democrats constantly talking about, we got to do stuff about, drug prices. We got to do stuff about healthcare. We got to do stuff about increasing wages. We got to do a ceasefire. They're not talking about that. That's the left is talking about that. The left and the left-wing propaganda media, right? Because they've got their progressive media. If ideology precedes the name of the media, it's propaganda, right? News media should not have an ideology. Progressive media should not exist. Conservative media should not exist when it comes to news. If you're talking about news in terms of what's happening in the world, right, you should just talk about the facts, right? But that's a topic for another video. But regardless, left-wing propaganda media, right, the actual left-wing media, is in alignment with the people, right? You have the people focused on these things. You have their left-wing propaganda media focused on those things. And then you have the Democratic Party not. In fact, these folks and a lot of these conversations are not welcomed in centrist liberal media, CNN, MSNBC, right? A lot of these, socialists, social democrats, and progressives are not welcomed on the liberal media, right? People like AOC was not welcomed in liberal media, but she's toned things down. So she's got a little bit of a departure from where the people are in terms of her actions. So now she seems to be welcomed more than she was before. But generally speaking, left-wingers are not welcomed on establishment media. Now, on the right, you don't see that, right? Some of the most extreme right people are welcomed and normalized in the establishment media, right? Steven Crowder, I believe, was a contributor on Fox News. Ben Shapiro was a contributor on Fox News. How many of these people were contributors on Fox News? You think far left people are welcomed in MSNBC and CNN? When's the last time you've seen something like that on those news channels? But of course, because of right-wing propaganda media, you would think that the people you see on those media are far left or whatever, but they're not. People say Biden is far left. Are you kidding me? Really? If Biden's far left, we would have a ceasefire in Gaza, or he'd be pushing that. If he's far left, he would have been yelling about wages all throughout his term, pushing, the same way he was when he was running, right? If he was far left, he would have done a lot more for drugs, not just the limited drugs that he focused on. He would do a lot more than that. We would have some serious healthcare reform thing going on. We'd have some serious reform in terms of law enforcement, right? Instead, we don't get anything remotely close to that. Now, people say he's one of the most progressive presidents, but the bar is so low, right? In comparison to other presidents, yeah, sure. And that's the trick the Democrats play, right? They lower the bar so low. You have one guy who never showed up for work. You get hired and you show up 25% of the time, and, you say you are showing up way more than the last guy. Historic attendance, right? Don't get caught up in that. The reality is Biden ain't no goddamn progressive president, right? He's a centrist president leaning more towards the right, right? Look at his border policies. Not unlike Donald Trump's border policies, right? Kept a lot of Donald Trump's border policies in place, but let conservative media tell it. It's open borders! Again, this is what the GOP wants you to be talking about and focus on. Open borders. That's their language. Why are you, the people, using the same language as these elites in the GOP? DEI, CRT, trans agenda. Why are you so in alignment with these corrupt elites in the GOP? Why are you not like the left, where they are focused on different things than what the elites want them to focus on, right? The elites want them to focus on how great Joe Biden is. Joe Biden's doing a great job and this and that, and Trump is a threat to democracy. That's what the elites want them to focus on. But they're not focused on that. They're focused on ceasefire in Gaza, healthcare, wages, right? Police reform. That's what they're focused on, right? They give a middle finger to the Democratic Party and say, no. This is what we want. And they get ignored. Meanwhile, the GOP is out there talking about DEI and this and that, and trans agenda, and Hunter Biden. And the media is repeating the same rhetoric. And you, the voters, you're all in alignment. Again, two corrupt parties that don't care about the American people. They only care about themselves and power. But one set of voters is in alignment with the corrupt party and what they want you to focus on. The direction that they're leading you in, right? The GOP is like the conservative sheep herders, right? And they're out there saying, come over here, yes, DEI, yes, the DEI, and Joe Biden is a socialist, right? And the conservatives are following along, going along with whatever the GOP is focused on, right? Wherever the GOP is focused, whatever, talking about whatever, there goes, conservatives. We don't see the GOP trying to say, imagine a world where the GOP is saying, DEI, DEI, and then the conservative voters are like, forget about DEI stuff. What about this stuff that's affecting me in my life right now that you guys don't want to talk about? Hey, Jim Jordan, forget about that culture war stuff. What about this thing? I'm trying to feed my family, and I'm having trouble because of X, Y, and Z. Let's talk about that. Stop talking about this other stuff. When are we going to see this from American conservatives? A rift between the elites in the GOP and the conservative voters. Similar to what we see on the left. Where the left is focused on one thing, the Democrats focus on something else. Right? But that's not a good place to be. Potentially, depends on your perspective. Because since the left is departed from the mainstream, they get sort of banished. Right? They get banished, they get smeared. They're not invited in, and they're not welcome to polite society. Look at the RNC event. You go to the RNC event, you see white nationalists, you see Proud Boys, you see all the most extreme people there. You go to a DNC event. You think you're gonna see does the AOC even go to DNC events? Is she invited in there? Would they let her? Probably now they might. But look at these far left people. Are any of them invited to DNC events? No. Far right people? Come on in. If these two elite structures are not focused on the American people, why is there such a synergy on the right, unlike what you see on the left? And again, many of you won't get that because right-wing media distorts what the left is, right? The idea to even suggest that Joe Biden is some kind of socialist, wow. Maybe you should subscribe to some of these communist channels so you could see what the actual left looks like. And if you saw them, maybe you'd stop looking at Joe Biden as some left-winger, right? You go far enough, these guys are talking about stuff about abolishing the police. Can you imagine Mr. Joe Biden going anywhere remotely close to talking about abolishing the police? That's what the real left, like when you go far left, that's what they're talking about, abolishing the police, right? Right. This is Baby Channel. The baby in the comment section below. Click on the like button. Subscribe. Smash that bell. Be well.